Hi, I wanted to jump on and talk about Aries and tree energy in the spring. And because today is the day of the equinox, and it's exciting. I don't know what it is, but yesterday I had so much energy. I'm like, spring is almost here. Well, actually, I know what it is. I didn't get enough sleep, and now I'm like, yay, Aries in spring. So, this is a good lesson about the fact that we need to be able to have that Pisces dream time and that water energy to really soak into the roots and to really nurture and nourish that tree energy, right? So, that is a quick lesson right there. But what I wanted to do is we're going to go over a little bit about the tree energy. We're going to go over a little bit about Aries energy, and then we're going to explore it through the image of the tarot. I'm not going to get too in deep in this over the video as far as the tree and Aries energy, because I think the write up did a pretty good job about that, right? Um, but I wanted to get some of the image pieces that maybe can't come through in text as much. So I'm gonna share my screen with you, and let's start off with the tree energy because I feel like the tree energy creates a better container for this work and for the way that these energies relate to each other. So whereas in Pisces, where we just came out of, the Western astrology tradition associates Pisces with water, and the Eastern tradition associates winter with water. So the two elements kind of went, showing you my comic book over there, Promethea, and the study of tarot magic. But essentially, so that melded really nicely with Pisces, right? And that is actually why I got that comic book, is that dreamy image and aspect. With spring and with Aries, we have two different elements here playing, right? In the Western tradition, we have the fire element, and in the Eastern tradition, we have the wood element or the tree element. And so we can see here in the chart this wood element. And in most places, you're going to hear it referred to as the wood element. My teacher calls it tree, and I like that because it invokes more of that living essence of it and the fact that it has that vitality. So tree energy really comes out of water energy, right? It requires that water energy to live and to grow. And that's an important part of that tree energy, and the fact that contemplative phase in the winter and that stillness in the winter and that gathering of our energy allows for the tree energy to slowly start to move up, right? To reach for the sun. And you see that in spring as you see the plants start to slowly bud and bloom, right? It's a slow process. They don't just grow overnight. A couple plants do, but most of them don't. And if we think about tree energy in its fullness, like it's ring after ring, year after year of slow, continuous growth. It's powerful and it's dense, right? That slow, continuous growth will lead to an oak tree, which can provide hours and hours and hours and hours of flame and energy and fire energy to us. So it's definitely a strong energy, but it takes time to cultivate, right? And it requires that stillness from the winter. It requires that dreamy magic energy of Pisces from the winter. And then it eventually leads into that fiery energy, which is much more instantaneous, is much faster, right? It's much more dynamic. It's charismatic. It wants to experience everything right now, right here. Whereas the tree energy is yang energy, so it's definitely more expressive, and extroverted, but it takes its time a little bit more so, right? And so where the wisdom of this pops up with the Taoists is that we are encouraged in the spring to start things, but to start them up slowly, right? To build up that energy rather than just rush into new projects and new things and just pile everything up, which is what Aries loves to do, right? Aries loves to rush into things. So let's go over here and check out the Western tradition. So we're over here in the Western tradition, and I'm going to make this smaller, which is cool because For some reason, it feels out of balance. My Libra moon is just like, why isn't this balanced? What is going on here? Okay, so we're over here and we're in the Western tradition, and you have Aries here, which is actually across the way from that Libra. And we have the first house here. Aries naturally rules over the first house. Mars naturally rules over Aries. It's a cardinal sign and it's a fire sign, right? So a couple things to draw from this. That fire sign is it's passionate. It knows what what it wants, and when it's in the flow of its passion, it's intuitional, right? Water energy has the ability when you get down here into Cancer and Scorpio and Pisces, that has the ability to tap into intuitions through emotions, right? To tap into intuitions through feeling out what's going on in your body, through the dream body and what happens in your dreams, and to feel out the emotions of other people in the room. Libra can be pretty intuitional by feeling out the environment and what's going on there, cerebrally feeling out the environment, right? Each one of the elements has their own ways to sort of practice intuition. Gemini and Aquarius can have an intuition as far as just like random instant insight for like Aquarius, or Gemini gets enough data points that it's like, oh, yes, this thing, right? And it might not necessarily make sense, but it's connecting as far as just like A leads to B leads to C, but it's connecting so many different data points that it's like, oh, well, the answer is Z over here, right? So each of the signs has its way of connecting to a form of intuition. Where the fire intuition really pops up is when the person is just in that fiery, passionate flow, right? It just burns its way through, right? It just trailblazes the trail and just burns its way through the forest. And it's like, well, yes, see, look at all the doors opened up simply because I was me, right? And I marched forth as Aries, or I marched forth as Leo, or as Sagittarius, and the doors open, and I had that, like, I just knew where I had to be because that is what I had to do. That is a lot more of that fire energy. And with Aries being cardinal, it means that it's starting things, right? It's the perfect time for spring, and it works so perfectly for spring because we're starting that growth. The plants are reaching for the sun. They are fighting off their competition, right? A lot of the time, plants will compete for that sunlight. They'll compete for that energy. And the rest of nature is also competing for that, which is where you get a little bit more of that martial flavor of Aries and Mars. And it's in the first house, which means that it's really that part of ourselves that is so naturally us that we tend not to recognize that it's even there, right? I don't I've been using the example of like Gemini likes to gather energy, likes to talk. Other aspects though, I'm loud, right? I don't recognize that I'm loud most of the time. And it's taken a lot of work with Libra energy and other energies for me to get the sense and the feel of like, hey, I think I'm being really loud right now, right? Like that might not work. It might make people feel uncomfortable. It doesn't even register though for me, right? Whereas things in the second house are things that we claim, right? They're ideas that we claim, like I love astrology. I love the way that it works. It's this thing that's a part of me, but I have to claim that. I don't naturally just exude astrology, right? What I will exude is this desire and this ability to mix the realm of the mystical and magical and intuitional with the realms of science. I really like doing that, right? There's a natural, why can I say this here suddenly? There's a natural, we'll just skip that word, natural tendency for me. My first house is Gemini. So for me to collect all this information and put it together into a worldview, that is a natural part of me that wants to balance out like the science and balance out the spirituality. what those spiritual beliefs or scientific models and understanding actually are, that's more of a second house concern. The first house concern is more the fact that I even operate in that zone. And it's not until I do some self reflection that I recognize, like, that is in and itself, it's a first house thing, because it's not absolutely unique to me, but not everybody else does it. The things that are in the first house, we tend to be those things that we kind of just assume other people do, and then it takes a lot of life lessons to recognize not everybody does mix their science and their spirituality. There are people who don't even engage in spirituality. There are people who reject science or don't even think about that as a way of informing themselves. But when those proclivities, why can I not pronounce it? Okay. Anyways, when those natural inclinations uh, are part of ourselves in the first house, we just act from it. And that's perfect for Aries energy, because Aries energy just wants to act. It just wants to do. It's like any plant out there, right? It has the code for what to do in its DNA, and it doesn't think about, hey, perhaps I should send my leaf out this way because I think I'm going to catch some more sun there and it'll avoid the lavender that's growing over there. No, like the DNA is there and it just does, right? It just has that intuitive aspect of, this is exactly where I need to be. This is exactly what I need to do. And I have done it now, right? That spark of knowing and that spark of action are aligned and they're one, which brings us to the concept that I talked about in the moon video with Libra and Aries of Wu Wei, right? A lot of the concept behind Buddhism and Daoism is to get to the point where we are so unattached to the reaction of things that we are able to simply spontaneously act and do exactly what we need to do. That is the like highest form of Aries, right? Is it is able to just naturally do what it needs to do. In its less evolved form, it's very egoic. So it's doing what it thinks it needs to do, but what it thinks it needs to do is very conditioned by every other aspect of the chart, right? And when it does the self work and it removes the attachment to these other aspects, when it digs in deep in Scorpio and it digs out those archetypes and those deep wounds, and it does that transformation, when it balances itself with other people and relationships in Libra, when it explores the world and gets other points of view through Sagittarius, and it does all the rest of that work, then it's able to actually recognize all the points of attachment, recognize all the conditioning, and slowly remove those so that it's able to act in its most essential nature and just be aligned and do what needs to be done. So that's really the energy of Aries. And I want to point out again that it is ruled by Mars, because Mars is going to be the energy that makes the most sense of the tarot cards that come up, right? Because what I've noticed with the tarot cards is they really play on the Mars motif of evolution, right? The Aries that we have in astrology sign, it's based on Aries the ram, which has his own story. But the name is related to the Greek Aries, of the Greek war or god of war. And in the Greek tradition, the Greek god of war is he's pretty despised, right? You have Athena, who was seen as like a rational warrior who like fought for a cause, and that cause was good, and that cause was necessary, and she was cunning and she was wise. And then you had Aries, who kind of just fought for bloodlust. It was just like, I'm gonna just go conquer that. I'm just gonna go out on the field because I'm a badass and I want to like mow down an army. Like that is just what I do. And the people who do that are the people that I bestow my favors upon, right? The Greeks really saw Aries as rather uncivilized, and that energy evolves into the Roman conception of Mars, right? Mars is the equivalent of Aries, but the Romans, they update him. The Romans essentially something happens between the Aries of Greece and the Mars of Rome, where he gets cultivated. He grows up. He becomes more of the Roman soldier, and the Roman soldier was often a father. The Roman soldier would be planting the seeds and their farm, like taking care of their farm, go off to war, come back, and hold a lot more of that matured space, right? It wasn't as much of rebel rousing, even though the Greeks had very well trained armies for certain city states, but they really just despised that bloodlust factor. And Athena was more the cultivated warrior, whereas in Rome, they made Mars just stepped up into that cultivated figure. And where you're going to see that in the tarot is you're going to see that in the role of the King of Pentacles, and you're going to see that in the role of the Emperor. There's no real just fiery image in the tarot for Aries. There are fiery images, right? You would think that Aries might be aligned more so with the King of Wands, or aligned more so with some of those super fiery energies, but they've moved away from that, and they've really followed more about the evolution of Mars. And the evolution of Mars in the zodiac is that he starts with Aries. He starts off as essentially like an idealistic new recruit, right? Who kind of just like believes all the propaganda, right? Like, we are the righteous great guys. They are like monsters. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to fight. I'm going to kick ass, and I'm going to make the world better. Or maybe he just wants to have the experience of like of just taking over, right? He wants to just go out and conquer. He wants to just go out and have experience. He wants to go experience the world and just throw himself into it, right? And then you get Mars, who also in the ancient tradition rules over Scorpio, where he's like gone out to do that, right? He's left these lower houses of like the self-development. He's entered into the outer world. He's in the eighth house now of transformation. And he is in the frying pan, right? Like, he has hopped in through his eagerness into all of these experiences that he's now having. And through the pressure of having those experiences and the opposition. So that's another theme here that actually I want to backtrack to. Aries is very much about that duality of opposition, and it fits very much in the season where things are struggling to survive. They're breaking out of the cold. They're breaking out of the snow sometimes, right? They're breaking out of what has felt like the dead earth. We know it's not dead. We know that it's very fertile, but it's been frozen over by winter, and they're struggling to survive, and they're competing with other plants, and the animals are competing with each other, and there's this opposition to the world as life tries to just pull itself up, right? In Scorpio, that interaction, that opposition is now starting to create a pressure that causes change and evolution, very much like the struggle to survive causes animals and plants to evolve and to change, right? And to adapt. And so that energy of experience and actually being in the middle of it all, right? It's lost its naivety. It's in the middle of it all. It's struggling to survive. And so it's evolving and it's adapting. And that leads to Capricorn, where Mars is exalted. It has gone through it all, right? It's gone through the transformation. It's no longer the newbie soldier. It's no longer the fresh, wide-eyed recruit. It's not stuck in the trenches anymore, having to do the work to change. It's done that. It has experience, and it's able to, Mars is really able to live and speak from that experience, right? He's a little bit wiser. If you read accounts of really beloved like generals or leaders, or even some fiction work with it. I love some of the fiction pieces I've read about soldiers and generals based or by anthropologists based off of those other accounts. They paint that picture that like they're stern, but they're a little bit motherly to their own troops, right? Like, they're stern, but they take care of their own troops. They make sure they have the supplies they need. They make sure like they're mindful of their troops' emotions, because they have to be mindful of morale. They're mindful of like who seems like they're about to break, right? Like, maybe shift them around, get them a little bit R&R. They have to take on this role of, even though they have that very masculine aspect and that very like authoritative, like no, like I'm in charge to keep order in this chaos that is as war, they have to adopt a little bit of the feminine too, right? And they do this from having experiences. They do this from recognizing, like, hey, if I push my soldiers too hard, if I push this thing too hard, it's going to break. They're going to snap. So I need to be able to figure out how to work with them. And because I've been in the trenches before, because I was a bright eyed recruit before, I can draw on those experiences, right? And that tends to be the sign that you, or that energy that you see a little bit more in the tarot that gets associated with Aries. And it's that evolved energy that we talked about earlier, where Aries in its prime has grown from its life experience. Like it starts out, it's this kid, it's just fresh energy. It goes all the way through the signs. It deals with its own relationship to what it claims. It deals with communication. It deals with the house and the family. It deals with other partners. It deals with sex and death and um, pressure from transformation. It has to make its way in the world. It deals with the realm of dreams. It does all that exploration. And now it's wise, right? It's able to step and be where it needs to be. And that is the energy that the tarot really represents. And I actually really like that, right? um, because that when that happens, it's incredibly powerful. And the sun, the luminary that really is associated with like our life path, is exalted in Aries. It's a good place for the sun to be, just like Mars is a good place to be as Capricorn. The best place for it to be is Capricorn, according to the ancients. The best place for the sun to be is Aries, because it what it does is, no matter how difficult it is, that sun is going to explore all the possibilities that light its passion. It's going to gather a ton and a ton of experience. And hopefully, with a little bit of cultivating and self reflection that the other planets and the other signs can bring in, it really, really grows from that, right? It's constantly challenging its challenges, it's constantly challenging itself. That Aries energy is constantly challenging itself and the world around, and if it cultivates it right and it learns its lessons, it grows and it evolves and it adapts. And that is a very powerful energy to have when we're talking about our life paths and the direction that we're going, right? It's an incredibly useful energy. So let's dive in to the tarot, and we will dive in with the Emperor first, because the Emperor is seen in tarot to represent Aries. And so we have the Emperor here. He is the fourth card of the tarot, right? He comes right after, let's see if I can get this right. You've got the Fool of Zero, then you've got the Magus, then you've got the Priestess, and then you have the Empress. So he ends up being really kind of the fifth card, but he's called the fourth card because it starts with zero with the Fool. And where is the Empress is the mother figure. The Emperor tends to be the father figure, right? He's an aged father figure. He's got that white beard. So we're talking about that kind of Mars and Capricorn. He's seen the trenches. He's had a lot of life experiences. What has motivated a lot of these life experiences is this Aries ram, which caused him to rush out into a lot of things, gather a lot of life experience. This isn't the hermit, like, right? This isn't a man who like went and meditated in a cave and came up with insights. He's not a scholar who went and just like read a bajillion books and that's where his wisdom comes from or his knowledge comes from. This is a man of experience. He has lived. He has rushed out. He has conquered the mountains behind him. He has walked all over those things. He has flown with the rivers. He has walked through the plains. He has very grounded, real experience, right? He's holding on to the ink, right? Which is a sign of life and a sign of life that is embodied, or life that allows the embodiment of the spirit, right? He's experienced the spirit through the fact that he has these experiences. And he is right here as the fourth or fifth card. He comes from this line of the spiritual transmission, right? Like you start off with the Fool, which is like the lowest and the highest points, kind of like an ace card, where like they seem like a fool, but they're actually naturally just connected with the cosmos. It flows down. You have the Magus, and then you have the Priestess, which really connect to that spiritual realm through a more knowledge based aspect of in the Sephiroth, it would be Bina, and then the more just channeled aspect of the priestess, which in the Sephiroth would be uh, Tefret. And then you have the Empress, which connects to where essentially the Fool would be located, connecting Kater to. I think I'm getting a little bit lost here, and the fact I'm going off on a tangent that isn't necessary. But in the Sephiroth, essentially in Kabbalah, you have this point of wisdom, and then this point of knowledge. And one acts from simply a deep knowing that it doesn't even need to know that it knows, right? And that's connected to the Fool. And one acts from this kind of experiential embodiment of its knowing, and these are all connected by the signs that come before the emperor, right? So you have this energy of essentially emanation, right? The spiritual truth is getting broader and broader, and the world is forming a little bit more and more solid. And when it reaches the emperor, this like spiritual light or radiation now moving through, it reaches the emperor, who learns through the physical world, right? He learns about that spirituality. He learns about the higher truths through participating in the spiritual world. Which connects that realm of the spirit, right? That circle. It connects it to the T cross of matter, right? It connects it through the human experience of this man who is rushed off as a ram and as Aries to traverse all the worlds. And he's crowned with this wisdom now, right? He's earned his stripes, both in actually manifesting things in the world, and in just gathering his time and his experiences between the crown and the gray beard. And he holds a orb in his left hand, which as ancient rulers would depict themselves, medieval rulers would depict themselves with this orb representing the world, right? So it really represents his conquering of the external world. And he's geared to keep on going, right? And through these experiences, through this wisdom that he's really earned, he's able to be a good resource for the rest of his family, for the rest of the kingdom, right? For the entire empire. This is it's a good, the emperor is a good resource to have, right? It's the like family patriarch, and its more negative aspect that can be overly controlling and negative, but in its like highest ideal, it's just a good resource where you can go like, hey grandpa, like tell me about life. And grandpa's like, well, let me tell you the last 80 years of my life and all the experiences I've had, and you can use this as you explore life too, right? Doesn't try to micromanage or control. He realizes that his wisdom comes from the experiences he's had. And so he lets other people have those experiences and just kind of like helps them understand it through the experiences he's had. And so that represents Aries. And then when we get into the court cards, these represent the transitions, right? So the Queen of Wands, we've already talked about because we talked about the very end of Pisces. And so the Queen of Wands represents the transition from Pisces into Aries, right? Which can really help us understand how the energy flows, right? So we talked about last time how she's holding her wand, which is a symbol of like power and strength. It's budding, it's got life, it's got vitality. She's holding the sunflower, which also is this really radiant expression of life and vitality. The flower itself represents the feminine, the stem represents the masculine. They're wedded together into this life. These sunflowers are a motif that is around her, this radiating nature, and she's got lions all around her, right? She's got the lions behind her on the throne. She's sitting on the lions, and this really connects her almost to that Leo energy of just radiating her presence. And then she's got her black cat in front of her, which we talked about with Pisces, links her back to that realm of dreams and magic and intuition, right? She's nurtured and nourished by the waters of Pisces, by that dream realm. It's what allows her to sit up so straight. If we think about a tree has its xylem, right? It's got this entire network that goes from roots to the very tips and tops of the tree of xylem, and that pumps the tree up with water, which allows it to stand up straight, right? It swells the cells, and between that and the cell walls and cellulose, it allows for a very strong, stable tree. Like she has internalized and integrated this water energy to the point where, just like the staff and just like the sunflower that she's holding onto, it is allowed for life. It is allowed for growth. It is allowed for her to expand. And she does expand. She expands as the Queen of Wands, a very passionate, fiery energy that is able to blaze and be like, hey, you know me and you love me because I'm the Queen of Wands and I'm extroverted and everybody thinks I'm amazing because I am able to engage with everybody, right? She's got that kind of Leo extroversion energy. And it really shows that ability of that ability of integrating the water from Pisces and using that to really spark the flame in Aries and to build that confidence and to build that ability to go out in the world and to sit still and regal and powerful, knowing that we can rely on those deep resources, right? And she is a very powerful figure in that. And then that energy, and notice how it's not, because the beginning of it, it's not just pure fire, right? Like she's feminine. She isn't just the conquering, like, fiery king. She represents Aries, but she represents Aries coming from the feminine into Aries, right? And then the next card becomes the King of Pentacles, which is not the most fiery king, right? The King of Pentacles is stable. He's stability, right? Like he plays his cards safe. He doesn't take too many chances, but he continuously works. He continuously takes one step in front of the other. And because of this, he's created a lot of material success, right? And he is comfortable and he is nurtured and nourished and really learned the lessons of abundance. He relates to the transition between Aries into Taurus, right? So that development of merging that fiery energy and that passion with the water that we see in the Queen, and that life and that vitality that she is able to really invoke and to really present to the world, when that's held and that is cultivated and it has experiences, like the Emperor has his experiences, it's able to gather to itself the stability of the King of Pentacles. And you see him sitting on his throne with the bulls of Taurus. You see him with his pentacle representing the earth, right? You see him with his own sign of ruling the world, right? And his own scepter. He's got a castle. He's established behind himself. It even looks like he has a wall behind him, showing he is protected and established. There are vines and plants growing all around him, and it's depicted on his clothes. So there's this abundance, right? Abundant wealth of plant life. And that really, I mean, to the ancients, medieval, all agricultural societies, that abundant wealth of plant life really signals. Sorry, had to do a quick edit there. Dog started acting up. So anyways, that abundance of crops and agricultural society of it, like it denotes the fact of like massive abundance and success for the person, right? That what they have worked on has really been cultivated and it's come to fruition. And that's really where you see the cycle coming to fruition is right, is like if we look at the cycle of the year, you've gone through Pisces, you've gone through the dream, you've nurtured this dream aspect, you've entered into Aries, you exert the energy that you need to exert in a attuned, aligned way. And this is created after time and multiple cycles of cultivation. It has created a very stable life. It has created a very stable world for yourself. And that's really what the King of Pentacles represents here, right? He has his foot on another bull's head, he's got his foot on the world. Like he's comfortable, he's got it. Um, and that's what comes from the cycles of, okay, like the cycles of the seasons when we move around the chart over and over and over again. And I think I did here, when we move around the chart over and over and over again. Let's see this and find it here real quick. Um, you gather all these experiences starting with Aries, and you go through and you do the depth work, and you work on your relationships, and you work on your home environment. You're constantly cultivating and cultivating, and each round, each cycle, you you cultivate more and more, right? And you reap something deeper, you reap something greater than the cycles and the years before. And it leads to being able to be comfortable in the world, right? And it leads to that true emperor figure. So that is the lesson for Aries and tree energy. And looking at the images of the tarot, I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, enjoy your day and enjoy your week and Aries in the spring season. Okay, thank you. Bye.